This is the Fixer Punk Podcast, the podcast that sometimes enjoys listening to hold music. I'm Grayson Peltier. So today, the Supreme Court handed down its ruling on student debt forgiveness, and just as expected, they struck down President Biden's student loan debt forgiveness plan. And President Biden is taking some actions to mitigate the damage from that with a 12-month on-ramp period where there wouldn't be any negative credit reporting or default of your student loans if you can't make the payment, and pursuing options to cancel debt under the Higher Education Act, which is different from the law in question in the Supreme Court ruling. But as big of news as this is, I am seeing a much bigger trend in the overall economy coming in with really subtle indicators, things that you wouldn't even think of as being an indicator of any sort of bigger economic or political trend. Very little minor, basically minor consumer disturbances that point to economic turmoil and trouble ahead. Things like the Netflix password rules, where now you can't really share your Netflix password with people who don't live in your same household. Costco, constantly checking your membership card, acting like a bouncer at a club. Well, even when you're going to self-checkout, you've had your membership card checked at the front. They're checking it again when you're at the checkout, checking it again, checking your receipt when you leave, which is normal for them. But some people are saying that certain locations are getting pretty darn aggressive about checking it to make sure that you're not using somebody else's card, even if it's like a family member who's sick or disabled. You can't use their card. You have to go and buy another membership for yourself. Those types of little consumer disturbances, cutbacks in customer service, and then, of course, the workplace problems that people are seeing, the aggressive push for return to office, worsening work conditions, problems getting good quality jobs. There's still no shortage of crappy jobs. But in terms of good quality jobs, people are reporting that it's way hard to get good quality jobs. All of these little signs put together, and even bigger signs of distress that are more localized. Like, stock market looks fine. It's doing better than we expected. Inflation in America is better than other G7 countries. President Biden's talking about Bidenomics, which I think is a good, positive thing. I think he is doing many good things economically. The investments through the American Rescue Plan, through the bipartisan infrastructure law, through the Inflation Reduction Act, all amazing, positive things. But there is this undercurrent going on, almost as if it's like an insurgency building underneath our noses that wants to put in what I have called the economic police state. And this is a very subtle way of, without there being a full recession, a way of economic elites trying to regain their power and really their profits by any means necessary. And this is very similar to what happened around the 2008 recession as well. Companies are just generally not being as generous. And there are changes going on in the economy right now that basically set the tone that everything's fine, it's just you that's having a problem. Or you must be doing something wrong if you're suffering economically right now. Because on a macro level, the economy's fine. But there are people struggling and suffering anyway. But it's because they're being picked off by little minor things as well. And there are the little indicators that we see. It's basically anything and everything that can be done to increase corporate profits and control, short of full-on, straight-up crashing the economy. And you're seeing money being pulled out of random places right now. The economy overall is fine, but there are these different places, and it's generally that is picking off people who are most vulnerable. The difference between an economic police state and just a straight up recession is that the former picks off the most vulnerable and it gives them the most punishment. So on the work side, you see, of course, problems with work from home jobs going away. Those are things that people with disabilities, people who live further away from big cities need, people who can't afford to commute extremely long distances, people who are priced out of housing markets, that's going away. Side hustles and like the creator economy are drying up. Stuff like influencers, those types of positions which are giving people representation and voice in media that wouldn't have access to the conventional media system. Those are drying up. Journalism, a lot of new media organizations seeing cuts. Even like random gig economy stuff like DoorDash. Like people are saying there are fewer DoorDash deliveries available because people aren't spending as much money right now. And what this is doing is it's basically just taking people who have succeeded beyond the way the system wanted them to succeed. Basically telling them, get back in line, get back into the low-wage slave economy. Okay, you're making good money as like an Uber driver, DoorDash driver? No, come back to McDonald's. We'll take you back in with open arms. And they're pushing them back. People who have maybe gotten successful in their own small business, they're getting pushed backwards too. And it's not by some massive, massive economic change. It's by these little things. And the reason why it's by these little things is, number one, they hope the annoyances that they're creating to increase profits, that they're not going to go noticed. They're thinking, oh yeah, you'll just put up with the fact that now you can't share your Netflix password. You're just going to pay some more money. You're going to Costco, you have to deal with being stalked for your membership card in like 3 different places. And you're going to start paying out more money for that. And they're like, okay, well, if you're a good participant in the economy, you're just not going to notice this stuff. And we're going to make a little bit more money. But the other part of it is that they want to basically make people believe it sets a tone. It sets a tone of that things are being cracked down on in the economy a little bit. Companies are just not as generous, even on the consumer side or the worker side. So what it does is it sets up a dynamic, an us versus them dynamic, a good guys versus bad guys type dynamic, where if you're the one enforcing the rules on your fellow worker, you're the good guy. But if you're the one who is breaking said rules, you're unsuccessful and you're the bad guy. So like if you're trying to save your disabled loved one some money by shopping for them at Costco, you're the bad guy. You're working at Costco, still better paying than most retail places. But still possibly not like a living wage, except if you're like in a union location. You're a good guy. The other examples that are going to get more stark are the things that happened in the 2008 recession, where you had people who were working for banks and collection agencies. They're being given gift cards for foreclosing on the most people. Those people were desperate enough, the workforce, the mercenaries running the collection ecosystem for the banks, were desperate enough that those gift cards were an incentive to them. But they're like, yeah, you're the good guy. Here's a pat on the back. Here's a gift card for taking away the home of your fellow worker. And again, these things are you go from the very, very subtle to the very, very, very extreme. But they're all kind of the same thing. They all have that common element of control and adversarialism. Those two elements of the elites taking control, while there's adversarialism by the normal worker toward other fellow citizens. And the thing is that fellow citizens actually do kind of want to do these things sometimes without being prompted, without being given a gift card or a pat on the back for it. And the student loan debt narrative is one of like the key examples of the economic police state being enforced by fellow working class people. What they're doing is that media generally baits the quote unquote good upper middle class worker to look down, sneer, and taunt those who are down with ease and accuse them of stealing in some way. So in these online narratives around student loan debt forgiveness, the reason why my video on the Supreme Court ruling on student debt forgiveness has no comments is because one of my videos on that, one of my highest viewed videos on TikTok ever, actually got a ton of hate comments from just people saying, you took out the loan, you need to pay it back. Why should I have to pay for you? Why are you not working harder? Why are you not working 100 hours a week to pay off your student loans? I work hard. I shouldn't have to pay for you. That's all just training the mind to oppose your fellow workers instead of opposing those at the top. And the conditioning is clearly working. So that narrative is being set up. I pay my bills, you don't pay your bills. So there's a good versus bad narrative there that's being set up and is all punching down. Another interesting example of this I just heard about was cities that are banning people from living with roommates, which they tell you, oh yeah, go live with roommates. But there are cities now like Shawnee, Kansas, that bans more than 3 people from living in a house that are not related to each other. So that's another way of enforcing this. It's also homogeneity, community stuff. HOAs have been doing that crap since the beginning of when HOAs existed. But this is happening more and more. And that is, again, picking off people for economic gains, for the gains of the landlord class to be able to sell more real estate at a higher price, or to lease more real estate at a higher price, because maybe if you have more roommates, you could actually buy a home. And that's one of the best ways to get yourself out of the system. I know interest rates are pretty high right now, but there may be coming, if we start to see some softening in the housing market, a good opportunity to buy. And if you want to look into that whole co-living thing, this is a small minority of cities and towns that are doing this. But if you have like people you want to buy a house with, there are all kinds of risks and controversies to that. And I probably need to do a whole episode on it. But if you're at all interested in buying a home to get yourself out of the landlord system, please give me a call on my office line, 657-206-0736, or email the grayson@offspeedsolutions.com email address. I'm actually a licensed real estate agent, and I refer out to other agents across the entire United States who can help you with that. If you're in a position to go and do that, I'd love to be able to connect you with somebody great who can help you with achieving that goal and get you in the right place where you're going to be able to use your financial leverage that you have now in the best way possible, or to plan for the future when you may have a little bit more leverage. Shameless plug aside, but that's what we're seeing is we're seeing these ways of setting things up to have us basically fight each other. And then, of course, you can't have a police state without surveillance. So you have all the workers in the workplace. This is definitely a thing. You have like spying on workers. You have the people who have had to like put mouse jigglers in for the so that they're always look like they're online. There are these tracking apps and stuff like that. There was a whole scandal around JP Morgan Chase with tracking apps and their employees. And of course, you have the employers who are saying remote workers are pretending to work instead of working. Elon Musk was the one who said that. And really, it's about making you look and feel like you're working rather than productivity itself. Like constantly sitting at your desk and constantly pretending to work is probably anathema to productivity. So what they want to do is is they want to tire you out, and they want to make sure that you always look like you're working. Make sure you're always conforming, so that when they come around, they can physically come to your desk and they can check to see, oh yeah, this person looks like a good worker bee who is in line in the factory line of our little system here. That's kind of a common thread here, is they want to be able to oversee and micromanage you and make you feel less than. And if you don't fall into that, then you get knocked out. You get thrown out of the royal rumble of the American economy. So they keep narrowing people out by getting them out on these little things before they lay down the big hammer of dropping the entire market down, which could pick off even the people that they like a little bit more. And this is all a thing about having no mercy when it comes to recouping profits. And they're instilling this into other people. And if we want to talk historically, we want to talk about 2008 and also the earlier parts of the COVID pandemic. This stuff tends to be permanent. We started to see after the 2008 economic recession, we started to see a lot of cuts in jobs and a lot of jobs going away, a lot of stuff being taken to like just freelance work, minimizing workforces, industry consolidation. All of that stuff sticks. And then in the COVID pandemic, we started to see companies cut back on customer service. So you have a lot of workers who had jobs doing just like customer service and stuff like that, low end, low wage jobs. Companies cut back on those things. They're like, okay, let's replace our customer service workers with a chat bot. And let's just say if you call in and you get put on hold for 2 hours, oh yeah, it's because of COVID, because we had to cut back on things because of COVID. We had to cut back on hours because of COVID. But now we're seeing that those cuts are becoming permanent. So they're like, okay, another way we pick off people, the superfluous support, we pick off consumers. So consumers that need extra support or help from our business, we're kicking them off too, because we're not going to give them as good of service as they want. We're not going to help people. We're not going to help our customers as much. We're going to make ourselves completely inaccessible. So if you're a customer with a problem, you got money taken out of your bank account for the wrong reason or whatever, we're going to make it impossible to reach us. So then again, we pick off a little bit of money from you. And when you're stuck there sitting on hold for 2 hours, you just give up, you hang up, and boom, the extra $10 is gone from your bank account. And when you do get to somebody, the person you're going to get to is a frustrated low-wage worker, probably making less money than yourself, maybe even working overseas. But we are insulating ourselves from the criticism. We live in a castle. We, the owners of these companies that are screwing people over, live in a castle that is impermeable and guarded by an army of these customer service people. There's actually a really good video that shows this from More Perfect Union, a YouTube channel of a pro-labor media group, nonprofit. And I'm going to link that in the description because it goes into a lot more details about like customer service and sort of the economic and political sociology behind that. Very interesting stuff. And overall, you're in an I've got mine type attitude while also fighting for the capital's rule. Oftentimes the attitudes will get confused. Just like on the student loan thing, you have people making $70,000 to $100,000 a year who are fighting against people who are making $50,000 a year. You have that dynamic going, but then even in the little things, in customer service, you have people who are making very little money. And you have people who are making very little money working in customer service jobs. And those people are going against the customer and going for the company. They're like, every time the customers are asking for the company to do something, then I'm not happy that these customers are attacking me, which, yeah, you're not going to be happy, but then you're not taking the position of the customer, you're taking the position of the company, because that's kind of how you've been conditioned to as a customer service worker. They're like, oh yeah, these customers are just complaining so much, which, yes, we totally oppose people who are excessively complaining. Karens and stuff like that, people that make the lives of customer service workers worse, are contributing to their own poor customer service. That's a big position that I really want to drive home, is that people who are contributing to the pressure and the oppression over low-wage service workers are causing their own problems with customer service and causing people to not want to enter these jobs and not take these bad jobs. Low wages are enough, but if you're being abused by people, that makes it even worse. But you have like there's like a subreddit for call centers, and you look at it, and it's very like pro company. Like these low wage workers are now just saying all these things that are very in favor of the company. They're like, these people, they're always complaining about the company's policies. It's such a problem. Why don't they just shut up and not be upset about the company's policies and just follow them? And the company's policies, oftentimes, the reason why people are complaining about them is because these policies have problems. They are bad for the consumer. Sometimes they might be blatantly illegal. And you're punching down again. And on the workplace side, on the employment side, employee versus employee, the work from home subreddit, you go there and you see there's been a good amount of people on that subreddit that are going pro-union. Thankfully, a lot of good talk of people saying, now that my company is forcing people to return to the office, I am going to support a union. And that is a great thing, because people are discovering the value of a union. They're like, okay, I was told that my job would be permanently remote work, or permanently work from home. I moved across the country. I uprooted my life to make sure to have the life that I really wanted to, because now I can do all these things because I have a permanent remote job. And then they're like, no, you have to return to the office as of next month. And people are realizing that just the verbal word of an employer isn't enough. You need something solid. You need a collective bargaining agreement to protect you. So the work from home subreddit, I am so glad there's been a little bit of radicalization there. So that's a good thing. But what you do also see there is you see them a lot of times, like, again, punching down. You see people saying, well, all these people are asking for remote jobs. All these people are asking for work from home jobs, yet they have no skills. They're not the people who should deserve this. You have the deserving people who deserve a work from home job and people who don't deserve it. Somebody even said that people seeking a remote job have to realize that what they're seeking, that seeking a remote job is tantamount to wanting to play in the NBA, which is just preposterous. They're saying it's the most competitive space for work right now, when there are tons and tons of jobs that are in offices that can be done remotely, and there are tons of people who need that accommodation in order to be able to hold down a job. People with all kinds of health issues, disabilities, barriers to employment, no transportation, skilled people that can do great work. And they're just bagging on them and telling them that this is the hardest thing in the world, and they're just protecting themselves. I've got mine. I'll just throw you out of this Royal Rumble so that I can stay in here and grab the chip for myself. And then, aside from these like court of public opinion type things, there's some stuff that goes on with the economic police state coming that is actual legal enforcement and involves the courts. There is a really good documentary podcast series called The Big Con with Patrick Lavelle. It discusses mostly the 2008 recession. It's on a podcast called Politics Done Right. I'll also link that. That example that I gave earlier on of people who were working doing foreclosures in the 2008 recession, and were getting gift cards and getting incentivized to foreclose on fellow workers. That was from Patrick Lovell's documentary series, or from this podcast, Politics Done Right. I think it may actually be like an actual video documentary, but I've just been listening to like the audio documentary, and they're releasing new episodes. I think they're up to like episode 3, talking about corruption in the financial system, the financialization of the American economy, how the financial markets are sucking so much out of the economy that it's basically killing off the real economy itself, that derivatives are something like, I don't know, I think he said that for some of these financial firms, Goldman Sachs in particular, most of their money was made just based on manipulating money in the stock market. Just like I said, people get rich from manipulating money and decisions around it, not from hard work and not from the actual underlying economy. It was like, I think it was like 70 to 90%. But that's an aside. If you're interested in how things are actually going in the economy and what we can see if there's a recession coming, then go and listen to Politics Done Right, The Big Con with Patrick Lovell, Lovell. You can probably find it on podcast platforms, or I'll link it in the description too. But that's where I got that example about the gift cards being given to people who are doing these foreclosures. And the judicial system can be corrupted very easily, just like we're seeing with the Supreme Court, with Clarence Thomas taking these gifts and lavish trips from billionaires and people connected to who have a vested interest in cases he's deciding. Same thing's even happening with local courts. You're going to see debt collection and stuff like that get aggressive. If there's ever a foreclosure crisis again, which right now I don't know if this is going to get to a foreclosure crisis because there is enough equity in most people's homes. It seems that we're not going to wind up with a bunch of people underwater, and there was enforcement and legal changes that were done to make sure people weren't getting as many deceptive, fraudulent home loans. So that may not be it, but you'll definitely see an uptick in collection issues. And judges can be bought off in the lower courts as well, because judges are often elected. And some of these judges were taking, in the foreclosure crisis, they were taking donations. This is something that Patrick Lovell stated in his documentary series. They were taking campaign donations from big banks, and judges who wouldn't, or judge candidates who wouldn't take the donations, were very maligned and kind of blackballed in their campaigns. So the corporations will weaponize government for their own purposes. And one quote from that Patrick Lovell documentary that really stuck with me was, "A perfect crime is a crime that involves everybody." And that's exactly what this economic police state is. So you have like just the average workers, you have cracking different institutions and things like that. You have higher prices, which are a very explicit thing. But you have all kinds of institutions that involve everybody trying to push down the working class, pick off people out of the working class who can be used as economic fodder to try to pump up profits, but it involves everybody. And that is one of the big themes of this. So going back to like collections, prepare for there to be a lot of like debt collection stuff going on. There was a lot of mass debt collection after the 2008 recession. So one of the things you want to do to prepare yourself is understand like your legal rights around debt collection. There's the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. There are all kinds of local and state laws and ways that basically when you're dealing with collections, oftentimes you can negotiate the money, the debt down. If you've gotten to that point where your credit is destroyed and you're in collections and all that, you can negotiate the debt down. You can fight these cases in court. A lot of this stuff is way too detailed for me to go into on this episode. But unfortunately, what this documentary was explaining was that these judges were just not considering any legal arguments from defendants who were being sued by these banks, who had legitimate disputes with the amount that they were being billed. All of these things are just little scams that are just going to come up. You're just going to see an increase in scams, debt collection scams, financial scams of all kinds, actually. You even saw, like with the 2008 recession, after the markets crashed, because people who were successful, financial advisors, real estate agents, because they want to maintain their facade of success, they turned to doing fraudulent things. I had a loved one go through investment fraud during this period. So be very careful before you open up your wallet for anybody, whether they're claiming you owe something or whether they're trying to offer you the safest investment in the world, the business opportunity of a lifetime. All of those things, those types of frauds are going to start to really come out soon if the economy starts to crash, because people who are in these positions of power are going to start to try to enforce that, and they're going to do so through social engineering, deception, things to get you to give your money to them. So keep a good amount of savings and keep an eye out for scams. Keep yourself in a situation where you don't have to be financially manipulated by a boss, where if a boss comes and tells you to do the wrong thing, you're financially secure enough. This is easier said than done, but try to maintain your savings to a point where if they try to tell you to do something that you don't believe in, or they try to get you to do unethical things, then you can walk away safely for a period of time. So that's how you sort of prepare yourself. As mentally prepare, know that they're going to try to trick you to think that the people beneath you are less than, because right now it's not a universal experience, because right now the numbers look good in the economy. And yes, President Biden has done a great job with that. And I totally agree that the Bidenomics is helping. It is working. But there are all these little forces that are coming out to try to knock it back down. The type of economic leniency we had during the recession around COVID and that pandemic aid was truly unprecedented for any recession, because everything just hit all at once. Just one big fell swoop, everybody was knocked down. So because everybody was knocked down, there was interest in everybody getting help. But now the way that they design these recessions, the way that things are designed to go in the economy, it is designed to make it easy for you to say, oh yeah, it's them. It's those people. It's those people. First, but remember, the first they came for this, then they came for that pattern is very apt in this situation too. So we're not going to get that economic leniency. We're certainly not going to get that big resurgence of financial aid to people that we were doing during the pandemic. And that financial aid, that aid, just put people back into a position where things were a little bit fairer in the economy. The economy was just a little bit more fair for many people, not for all people necessarily, but it was more fair because you actually were giving people what they needed indiscriminately and not picking on an out group because the pandemic hit us all, at least to some extent. Inequality is still there, but there was widespread bipartisan support for that aid, but that's not coming back. And we're starting to see the indicators that the most vulnerable are getting knocked down. And the eliminations, sadly, are continuing. You have the really sad statistic that even as we try to provide more aid, because we're not caring for the most vulnerable in most cases, you're seeing stuff like homelessness go up. You have homelessness going up by 10% in the city of Los Angeles, even though there is assistance that is going on. You have these types of issues where, honestly, of course, there is going to continue to be problems because we have not addressed the things like affordable housing, and because we have reduced this aid that was helping the working class to finally get back on their feet. And boom, it's gone. Pulled out from underneath their feet. And we expect that things are going to get better. No, they're not. And this is a much larger issue than the mayor of Los Angeles. It's a much larger issue than even the president of the United States. It is factors in capitalism and people with money and control that want to find whatever way to increase their profits because they know that the financial market can profit off of failure. They can make money if people fail. And if they can do it in a way that is subtle and that gets the majority of hardworking, tax-paying Americans on their side, then all the better for them. Just don't fall for it, because today it could be somebody becoming homeless. Tomorrow it could be you losing your job. It could be you getting swindled financially. It could be you getting some sort of fraudulent collection letter and not having your voice heard by a judge. So keep your eyes out and open for who is really causing the problems, and not your fellow workers and not those who are disadvantaged in society. All right, I think that's going to wrap it up for this episode. Because I want to make sure that there's dialogue here, and I want people to know the stories of people who get affected by things that are happening in the world, so you actually put at least a voice, if not a face, to a problem that is happening, so it's not just an other. I'd love it if you'd call in and leave a message and let me know if you're experiencing some sort of, even if it's just some minor inconvenience in your life of like, the stores are being more strict on this, there's no customer service to help me, and my credit card is constantly being charged by this company or whatever, and nobody's helping me. I'm not able to get any help for my problem. Or it's up to the student loan debt forgiveness was something I was relying on financially, and my financial life is going to be incredibly miserable. I'm going to have trouble paying bills. People are saying that they're going to be missing meals because of the student loan debt payment pause ending and the forgiveness not happening. Whatever it is, whatever difficulty, whatever little aspect or big aspect of the economic police state you happen to be facing right now, I want to hear from you. Leave me a voicemail message anytime, day or night, at 844-477-PUNK, 844-477-7865. You can also email me, Grayson, Greyson, at offspeedsolutions.com, or contact me through social media. And please follow the social media. I keep that up to date throughout the week. TikTok is perhaps the most up to date with news and tips and ways to protect yourself and to help make your life a little bit better, because we are the political and social issues podcast that tries to make your life better. And that continues through the week on TikTok at FixerPunk, FIXERPUNK. That's also on Instagram, and on Twitter is at Grayson Nation, GreysonNation. Thank you so much for listening today, and I hope you'll join me again for the next episode.